Good afternoon and welcome to this webinar, Double Down on Automation to Reap Overwhelming Competitive Advantage. This event is brought to you by Engineering News Record and sponsored by Flowforma. Hi, I'm Scott Seltz, publisher of Engineering News Record and your moderator for today's presentation, and thank you for joining us. In 2023, the need to adapt and automate is urgent. The trajectory points toward digitization, and it's vital that the construction business continue to optimize and modernize process to stay competitive. Today, we'll discuss how organizations at whatever stage in their digital transformation journey must continue this upward trajectory or risk being left behind. Joining us from Flowforma, we'll hear from Paul Stone and Sean Kunkel. With a broad experience in the IT industry, Paul Stone uses his in-depth product and domain knowledge to support their clients and their internal teams in his role as product evangelist and strategist at Flowforma. He also proposes, manages, and communicates the product roadmap, aligning the company's product with the needs of their clients and the demands of the wider market. Sean Kunkel is a highly skilled professional in the IT industry. He is a process transformation expert at Flowforma and many years of experience in business technology in the construction industry. Sean worked closely with the construction organizations in the United States to empower them to achieve their digital transformation goals with an intuitive process automation tool. I'll be back at the end to field your questions to our presenters that come in throughout the webinar. So please don't forget to submit them in the Q&A section of your webinar console. Now let's hear from today's presenters, Paul and Sean. Over to you.
So I'm Paul Stone, working for Flowforma as a product strategist. And today we're going to talk about digital process automation, or DPA for short, and the benefits that it can bring to you and your organization. Now, I personally believe that your organization shouldn't just digitalize for no reason. You should focus on outcomes and focus on delivering value and measuring that value. And we have a quote here from company Forrester that says, your efforts will pay off for those who double down on automation. Ultimately, that's good. You're going to gain a competitive advantage. My objective today is to introduce our DPA tool, and most importantly, to share the stories and outcomes of our customers and to discover what they have reaped from digitizing processes on a broader scale. So now I'd like to tell you a little bit about Flowforma, the company, and then we'll talk about Flowforma, the product. First of all, Flowforma was formed back in 2012 and it released a product onto the market in 2013. So we've been around for a while, and over that time we've been revolutionizing, the business process management space. So we actually built a tool that allows businesses to quickly digitize their processes and drive business process automation in their organization. We've got a presence in over 20 countries, and currently our client base is well over 200,000 users across those 20 countries. We've earned global recognition, but in addition to that, we've earned a number of different awards from different organizations, including Microsoft. And you can see strong reviews of our product if you go to g2crowd.com, where you'll see that we have a very high rating from our client base. So now I'd like to tell you a little bit about the Flowforma product and how that works. So Flowforma is a digital process automation tool. And what it does is it automates the processes in your organization, the workflows. That's the tasks that people execute to achieve their business goals. In addition to that, as people are executing the tasks, it captures data through electronic forms and also documentation so that you have ultimately a digital record of all the work that was done. So it's driving workflow, capturing data, capturing documentation, and also generating documentation and communications that travel between the people in your organization and also externally to your clients, your suppliers, contractors, and so on. All of this information is stored in a central database, which ultimately allows you to carry out reporting on that data and keep track of all the activity that's going on in your organization. The system is designed so that you can actually digitize the processes yourself to work the way you work and deliver value straight away into your business. It does this, it's very fast so that you can quickly digitize the processes. It's very easy to use so that it gets adopted by the people in the business. It's very affordable. It's a SaaS solution, pay as you go. And as I said earlier on, it's a no-code solution. What that really means is that it's designed for you to take control. It's designed for you to digitize those processes. It's also very agile. You can change things very easily. So if you roll out a process and you find you know what it's not taking with the workforce, you can quickly change that process to make sure that the workforce adopt it and start using it and following it. So now what I'd like to do is maybe pass on to my colleague who will talk a little more about resilience.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate that. So overall right now in our industry, in construction, engineering, contracting, etc., what we found is that the three biggest focuses right now are technological innovation, diversity, and building new projects that last. Right now, what we found is that there's a huge digital transformation going on in the construction and design world, and globally, we're known, unfortunately, as being quite possibly the least overall digitalized industry that is out there. So we've made a lot of progress with that. We're continuing to make progress with diversity and bringing new talented people into the workforce to replace people that are retiring, and also working to better communicate about building structures that last. So we've made progress, but we still have plenty of work to go. What we found here recently is that 31% of organizations still find that they are running processes using paper, and it's 2023. So if this sounds like you, there's no need to panic. We run into this all the time. There is a solution out there to help reduce the need for paper processes at your organization. We also found that 62% are coming back saying that they are reliant on tools like spreadsheets to manage these manual flows. And oftentimes what we find is that when we are working with clients, it is oftentimes, hey, somebody is out in the field, they have to update a spreadsheet, and it creates a domino effect of negative business outcomes if something isn't updated in a timely fashion. An example of this is Breheny Engineering, a current client of ours. They're a 60-year-old civil engineering company. They specialize in a lot of highway, bridge, marine, and energy projects. And they were looking for a tool that ultimately aligned with their mission statement, which was value for customers, respect for their community, honesty, and high performance and integrity. And they ultimately chose Flowforma because we were not only able to help them digitize processes, but we were able to help them align with their mission statement to really be part of a cultural shift rather than just be a product or a service that their workforce was going to embrace to help fight the digital change initiative. So with that being said, I'd like to pass it on here. We're going to do a quick poll that you should see on your screen here. And we ask you just to provide some honest feedback here. Feel free to fill that in now, and we'll take the next 30 seconds to 1 minute to allow everybody to fill out the polling data. All right, thanks everybody. Greatly appreciate that feedback. At this time, I'm going to take a bit of time here to go over some different challenges and just touch on these very briefly. And what's interesting is in my role here at Flowforma, it's like we seem to see new challenges coming at us every single day. The consistent ones that we've had in the construction and engineering world, poor reporting ability. Again, what this comes down to is people using paper and emails and that domino effect of, hey, someone didn't do something and it affects multiple people down the chain. Very common in construction. One of the most important, maintaining a competitive edge. It's 2023 and we've all heard about digital transformation in construction. This isn't just a buzz heading. This is very real. It's very measurable. It has ROI. And ultimately, companies that embrace change versus fight change are going to be successful as we continue to move on and go through this journey in construction together. Paper and Excel, I'm sure everybody has dealt with this in some capacity. We're able to help alleviate this with Flowforma. And it comes down to customer experiences. Ultimately, companies that are easy to do business with are going to be preferred. And that helps when it comes to securing new projects. So being easy, having that customer service element, so important to being successful in 2023 and beyond. Health and safety is an interesting one here. So we've actually had several people coming to us recently saying, hey, we need a solution that's going to help manage audit trails, safety reports, incident reports. Oftentimes these are managed in the field. It's very manual, and it's super important to do this because at the end of the day, these incident reports or safety violations are big money when something happens. So having Flowforma is super beneficial to this area. And we're finding that construction projects have increasing costs with supply chain, with higher labor costs due to attracting new people into the field. So there's so many business cases surrounded by money here. Remote workforces, oftentimes all over the country, all over the states, maybe even all over the world. How do they communicate? How do they have that single source of truth? Flowforma helps to address that challenge. As Paul mentioned earlier, skill shortage. Here in North America, we're having a really difficult time attracting people to construction because a lot of 18-year-olds are going straight into college and they're not considering construction because it's not the most glamorous field. How do we bring in digital tools that millennials and Gen Zers want to use so that they stay in our industry for a long time? And last but not least, building resilience. We're going to touch on resilience here shortly. But resilience is another one of those terms that's not just a buzzword. It's a very real thing that our industry is collectively dealing with right now. So when it comes to addressing challenges here, we're going to go over just a couple different things here of challenges that Flowforma helps to address. So rapid adoption. As Paul mentioned, we're a no-code solution, not a low-code solution. We are designed for organizational transformation between multiple departments. And the benefits to having a no-code solution versus a no-code solution are that it's easy to launch, it's easy to see ROI on, and there's that decreased reliance on six-figure IT professionals or third parties that tend to be very expensive to work with. Our Sure Start program is designed to get one process fully launched and automated within 6 weeks. So it's often recommended that if you're going through Sure Start with us, find the process that's the biggest thorn in your side, that's creating the most waste, and start there. It's always good to start somewhere. As I mentioned, it's a cross-departmental solution. So it's meant for solutions in finance, safety, a lot of the different things that we just looked at there, accounting, human resources. That Swiss Army knife analogy that Paul gave is very real. We have accessibility on Android and iOS, so people working in different locations can use Flowforma and communicate, which ultimately helps lead to that single source of truth, that ecosystem where there's improved data and everybody has access to that, which ultimately is going to make entire teams and companies more productive, more efficient, and working better as we head into the future. So moving on here, we're going to discuss 3 key challenges. We're going to start with resilience and then go to skill shortages and a little bit more about those overruns. First, we are going to start with resilience. And the analogy here that I always like to give on these construction and engineering webinars is resilience, by definition, is the capacity to withstand or to recover quickly from difficulties and toughness. And oftentimes what I have found is that companies have long gotten by or attempted to get by with being scrappy. And the best analogy that I like to give is actually a boxing analogy. I'm a boxing fan. And if you watch technical boxers, they have a good jab. They have a good cross. They have a good hook. They're not going in there like this. They are very technical. They're very precise. And oftentimes organizations say, let's just work hard. Let's be scrappy. Let's be tough. There's a difference between scrappiness and resiliency. And what COVID really showed us is that, yeah, you can be scrappy, but that resiliency, there's no replacement for that. Having a structured, logical, ROI-driven approach to being resilient as an organization is ultimately what is needed to be successful going into the future. With that being said, I'm going to pass it back to Paul, and he's going to share a case study with you and some examples from a current Flowforma client.
Briefly, I'd like to talk about one of our clients here, Bouygues. Now, Bouygues is a very large organization, and we deal with the energy services division of that company. And one of the things that they noticed was that they had a lot of inefficiencies in their organization. They weren't able to deal with change very well. And they set up an innovation initiative in the organization to try and operate better. But what they needed was a tool that would help them actually change and change quickly. Now, they looked at various tools in the marketplace that would help them digitize their processes. But they found that in most cases they were just too slow, and they needed to change at pace. So they came along to Flowforma, found our tool, and realized, oh well, hey, maybe this might be it. This might be the way to change quickly. So they tested us out, and they implemented us to allow them to carry out stock management. They had a large hospital trust actually that they operated and maintained, and they didn't have a stock management system. They were handling stock management through a paper-based process with an Excel control spreadsheet, and the data was very inaccurate, and the data was troublesome to collect. It was often wrong. So they were looking for a digital process tool that would help them address this scenario, to help them improve efficiency and ultimately make their data more accurate. They came along to Flowforma and built out a solution in a matter of 6 weeks, and then implemented it really quickly and got control over that stock issue that they had. But this is really what the power of Flowforma. It allows you to deal with things where otherwise you might be struggling to deploy a solution. And you can deploy Flowforma really quickly. That allows you to address the problems as they arise. So we talk about resilience. We talk about resilience as being the ability to handle impact from the outside world, impact of change. And Flowforma is a tool that allows you to do just that, to manage that change, and ultimately come out better at the end of it all. With Bouygues, they noticed they were able to measure increased efficiency. They got an improvement, a very good response from their staff, because the staff actually felt empowered. A system had been delivered very quickly to solve their problem. They had a lot of involvement in that directly. And ultimately, that fed an appetite for automation in the company. It initiated a culture of change, a culture of innovation, that ultimately everybody in the company started to think about what they were doing, where they doing it most optimally, and also how they could better adapt to change as it occurred, ultimately increasing the resilience overall of the company. So this was a really big advantage, and maybe now we could just talk about resilience maybe in a wider context. So first of all, I think let's just talk about the situation. Well, we all know in a broad context, we're being impacted in construction by a number of things that are just hard to control. So increased supply costs, difficulty in the supply chain, talent scarcity. Like a lot of construction companies have full order books, but delivering on those orders are tricky if you don't have enough resources. So resource scarcity is a real challenge in construction at the moment. In fact, one of the construction recruitment companies that we spoke to told us that 77% of construction companies are actually hitting challenges fulfilling their orders because of lack of available contractors. So we think 2023, we'll see automation projects focus on continuity and resilience, handling these external forces that are impacting the way they work, impacting their ability to deliver on the projects and ultimately to generate turnover. So maybe Sean, maybe you could talk a little bit about our approach to addressing these issues.
Absolutely, Paul. So our approach is designed to be fast and get processes launched in weeks. It's designed to not have your team be reliant on either IT people, legacy knowledge. It is designed to really empower your team. And that's where that term citizen development comes from. And I think it's important to talk about not just the speed there, but it's the cultural value that happens when you have a team that sees a solution, not just as, oh, this is how I have to do my job now. This is a way that I can feel emboldened by this. I can help bring about that cultural and digital change within my company. And ultimately, that's going to lead to the company being more successful but it's really going to decrease turnover because people are not wasting time in spreadsheets, word forms, emails, papers. Simply put, they enjoy their job and they like what they do and they want to stay in construction. And that's where that cultural shift comes from. It's the optimization. It's seeing that growth and building together as a team. That's what it's all about. And it's at that point when you get to that data-driven approach where you're not shooting from the hip or operating on hunches or tribal knowledge or spreadsheets or waiting. It's having data to back up a solid business case for seeing ROI with what you are trying to accomplish with a no-code solution like Flowforma. Moving on there, we're going to talk about another challenge there. We've touched on it briefly here, but the skill shortage. Again, here in North America, what I have noticed, and it might be a bit different if we have any Europeans or anybody from overseas here, but we have a huge industry shortage of talent. And that's not just people out in the field working on projects in hard hats. That's people in technology. It's people in human resources. I was watching a webinar recently where they kind of joked about how a lot of people that end up in the construction and engineering world, they call them happy travelers, where maybe they worked in fintech or healthcare or some other field, and then everybody pops into construction, and the people that are there, it's kind of like, hey, we like this. It's fun. It's a progressive industry. We enjoy it. But when it comes to that more foundational level of employees where we're looking to bring in people that are 18 to 23, either right out of high school or right out of college, it's a bit of a challenge, especially here in North America. And what we found is that the Gen Zers, the millennials, the younger folks, they're used to using digital tools already. So being able to carry over that passion and the attitude of embracing technology, those generations tend to be much, much more open to overall digital transformation than what other different demographics or ages, if you will, might be. So with that being said, we're going to take a look at a case study here that really centers around skill shortages and how we were able to help them with that. So Rimkus Engineering is actually a consulting firm that does envelope restoration and renovation in New York City. And one of the challenges that they found is that they had a lot of processes that were killing their productivity. Nobody was efficient. And oftentimes they were reliant on employees to fill out something. It could have been a COVID checklist. It could have been an inspection form, something in the field, something about a leak requisition, purchase orders. Lots of different areas here where they were struggling to communicate and have templatized ways to fill out things so that there weren't gaps in communications. It's also interesting to note that with Rimkus, they were looking to go to market and soak up more market share, which naturally is going to involve having more employees that are going to not only need training on digital tools, but be accepting of these, be embracing of these, and see it as a way to grow within the company and help the company be more successful. So some of the results that we found when Rimkus came on board to Flowforma, they were able to automate faster, up to 4 times. It was able to help with their business development approach in soaking up more market share. Their clients were happier. They weren't reliant on clients to fill in information for them. Nobody was playing the waiting game. And it comes down to that agility that Paul mentioned earlier. They were able to be more agile, more successful, more progressive, and happy customers are repeat customers. That single source of truth and the data keeping, that's what's available with Flowforma. And oftentimes what we're seeing even more and more now is that when it comes to audits and regulations, there needs to be some way to save this and store it for later when somebody needs to see it. And that could be a government thing. It could be a local thing. It could be an internal ISO auditing type of thing. It's really important to have those audit trails and the records of the procedures there. So you can see the quote there from James. He talked about the success of the no-code solution, the quickness, and really the gains that they had that were measurable from having a no-code approach versus the low-code approach with Flowforma. Moving
So now
on
we're going.
here, we're going to talk about alleviating the skills shortage. And if we could just, there we go. Go ahead, Paul.
So now we'll talk about the situation that we have at the moment. I think we've covered it all pretty well, but essentially, I think everybody in US construction understands there's a real skills shortage, and this is impacting project delivery at the end of the day. So this is the problem that we need to solve. How do we do that? Well, the most obvious thing is to attract new people into the workforce, but we also need to ensure that we retain the ones that we have, the workers that are already doing a great job. We need to retain them, and maybe also make them more productive, so that basically there's less of a need for new workers. We can deliver more with the workforce that we have today. So really, that's it. How do we recruit more people? How do we attract more people? How do we retain the ones we have and make those people more productive? Um, so we also find that in a world where people are burdened with repetitive tasks, we want to alleviate that as much as possible. You don't want people filling in forms and passing pieces of paper around, worrying about spreadsheets, etc. What you want them to do is carry out the construction work and getting that job done, delivering ultimately to the customer. So I think with that in mind, as a situation, Sean, maybe you could talk about the approach to remedying that.
Absolutely. So when it comes to that approach, again, it's productivity, and productivity is money. Ultimately, we're trying to alleviate admin costs here, mundane tasks that frustrate people and don't get the job done. In one particular case, we actually had 6,000 admin hours saved in 1 year by one of our Flowforma customers. And something like this is quite common because those admin hours are spent doing those outdated, mundane, boring, inefficient tasks, and saving that kind of labor hours in our industry is so huge. So again, these are measurable results that you can trace back to ROI, and that 60% efficiency increase. Again, we're talking about not just individual user increases, we're talking about departmental and cross-departmental increases in time, communication, and efficiency, which are ultimately going to help make your companies more competitive and greater places to work for your current employees and future employees as well. Moving along for the third challenge, wanted to share some information here with overruns and costs. And I'm sure everybody in some capacity on this call has seen an instance where something doesn't deliver on time, somebody doesn't update something, somebody's stranded in the field with no internet. I mean, it could be a plethora of different things. And at the end of the day, what it all boils down to is our industry has a hard time communicating. It's just the reality of it. It's always been like that. And having a solution in place to combat this is going to save money, because these project overruns, when things delay, it just constantly creates a domino effect of negative consequences. It creates confusion, and nothing flows properly when these things happen. So again, the challenge here is eliminating or reducing those overruns and saving money. That's what it all comes down to.
Yeah, so in terms of the situation, again, just to say that I think project overruns are probably the biggest thing on everybody's agenda. Overrunning projects mean higher costs. You're already struggling with supply chain costs, etc. That's the last thing you need. And so how to address project overruns? There's many ways, but really first thing I suppose is to try and record the data so that you know what's going on in your business. But at the end of the day, it's a significant problem, and it can be a very challenging problem for many organizations. But we feel digital process automation has something to contribute to that. And as well as that, when you're looking at the data that you're capturing, there's lots of inconsistencies in the processes that you're running in the business. People are doing things in different ways. And also the data that's being captured at every step in the process can be very inconsistent, because you might not have systems in there to validate that information. And also, if you're not controlling everybody in the project, you can actually have people's actions or inaction can impact others, ultimately resulting in project delays. So you need everything running smooth as clockwork, everybody talking to everybody else, so that everybody knows what's going on at any point in time, and they're picking up the ball when they need to pick it up and carrying it as long as they need to carry it. At the end of the day, a real problem with actually executing on this in a business is per data. If you're not passing the right data at the right time to the right people, they don't know what to do. They may know that they have a task, but they may not have the data that they need to carry out that task, or they may not be passing that on to the next person in line. So data is really key to all this. Gathering the right data at the right time, placing it in the hands of the right people, help to smooth things out and keep everything running like clockwork. Now that's a challenge. Maybe Sean, you could tell us a little bit about the solution there.
Absolutely, Paul. And data really is power. And ultimately, it's data that we want to be making decisions based off of. Again, we don't want it to be hunches and gut feelings. We need data to back up what we do. Now, when it comes to our approach, as we've mentioned, it's meant to accelerate process automation across a diverse workforce. And when I say diverse, I'm talking about people of all different ages, all different roles, all different locations. That's what this is all about. That data helps improve the process. Are becoming more and more costly. And I don't see any world whatsoever in the future where the impact of those delays is going to reduce in cost. They're only going to get more costly as costs for labor go up, as supply chain issues continue to happen, along with the levy of other challenges that we are all involved with in some capacity in this industry. So when it comes to measurable ROI and being able to look at figures where we can see that Flowforma is helping our clients, we had one client, $290,000 just saved on their daily briefing process across 100 supervisors. So imagine having supervisors all over the country, all over the world. You have to have a meeting. People have issues with internet connections, communication. Things happen to where they have to get called out of a meeting and they're doing something else. These are real numbers where people are really having the aid of a solution like Flowforma, where they can see measurable impact to how they're communicating and ultimately building leadership and credibility within their team. We had another client save $77,000 on just one process alone. And what we're seeing more and more happen now is that there are fines and penalties for not conforming to certain things. So there could be theoretically a penalty for not following a local law, a state law, a federal law. There's all different types of hand slapping measures in effect that are designed to encourage conformity and keep everybody on the same track. And this is oftentimes quite challenging in the United States in particular, because when it comes to how a lot of our governments and our states operate, I've often said jokingly on these calls, sometimes we operate like the 50 countries of America versus the 50 states of America. So when it comes to all the different regulations and penalties that can happen for not following things, having audit trails, having data, having processes, having workflows, it's part of that collective effort as a company to really embrace a digital change so that you're avoiding pitfalls and always making sure that you're on that forward progress in the digital journey. I'm going to kick it back to Paul here now to share some details here of another one of our current clients in New Zealand, Downer, New Zealand.
Thanks, Sean. Yeah, down in New Zealand, a large company where we operate with the transport division there. And they've got over 10,000 employees, and they're basically looking for a system to improve processes, particularly on site. So on the projects that they're delivering, to basically gather data more effectively, because they were gathering data through paper and spreadsheets and so on. It really wasn't working out. They weren't able to see at any one point in time what the current state of the project was. Very difficult to see the current project status and anticipate delays that would be caused by things not being done on time. And often those things would be out of their control, but they weren't able to see that they were even causing a blockage in the work. So they wanted to gather that data. They wanted to improve safety because they were working in transport projects where they were, for example, carrying out digging on rail lines and roadways where they would not know if they could encounter electrical wires, for example, underneath the ground as they broke ground. So they wanted to basically improve safety for their organization and to tackle the processes that, in the words of the senior engineer, were trapped in people's heads. So a lot of the processes were in people's heads and not well defined. So that what that meant was a process could execute one day in one person's head and it would be a different process the following day in somebody else's head. So it wasn't a consistency there between the processes. And that ultimately hits quality, right? So they wanted a digital tool to connect the workforce out on site and back in the office. So it needed to work via mobile devices and also work back on the desktop for the engineers in the HQ. So really anywhere, anytime, whether they were connected to the internet or not, it didn't matter. They needed to be able to gather that information. And the outcomes of digitizing those processes were very significant. So they reduced service strikes thanks to improved digital permit systems. So the example there I gave of hitting services where they were breaking electrical connections and so on, they were dealt with by having this control over the processes that they were executing, the work that they were doing. Ultimately reducing admin because the data was captured once and once only while it was happening out on site where the work was being done. It was validated right there and then sent into HQ for collection. So it was really reduced the amount of administration time all around that was required to actually manage these processes. Ultimately, it improved the quality of the documentation. And that's really important because that documentation is used internally, but it's also used externally as well. It's passed out to the client. So the client sees a better quality of service because they're getting better communications, whether that's automatically generated emails or whether it's documents that's generated automatically based on the data that was captured accurately in the field. At the end of the day, the client gets better comms, and that's really, really important. And also, they had the ability to access data no matter where they were. So if they were on site, they were able to pull information from that about the project straight onto the device, see what tasks they had to do that was completely associated with themselves. So every site worker would know what they needed to do at every point in time. And that really helped grease the wheels and keep that project moving on time. And at the end of the day, they also got improved management of the site staff because they were aware of the activities in the field. And I think that's a bit of feedback that's come back from every client who's adopted Flowforma. They're more aware of what's going on in their organization because it's more visible. It's more easy to understand what the site workers are actually doing and where things are at any point in time. Now, just through that one process that they implemented, for example, on the permit to dig, they saved over 430 hours. But one of the great things about digitizing processes is that you will get automatic performance statistics. So a digital system like Flowforma automatically captures how much time you're spending on all the work that you're doing. And it automatically knows who's doing what at any point in time. So you're able to quickly measure just how effective that digital process is. And this is what Downer did. They implemented it on a couple of projects to begin with, and these are some of the stats that they came back with. So overall, over 20,000 processes were initiated and completed. They saved over 2,000 hours on those processes versus what they'd been doing before. One of the key stats on this, and you may not be able to see it very well, is that they saved 126 days building those processes. So Downer actually tried other tools, low-code tools, to build out process automation themselves, and they found that they were too inefficient. They took too long. Flowforma was much, much faster, and they saved 126 days building the processes versus using alternative tools. Now, at the end of the day, these are just the stats for the first two projects. They've since gone on to implement the system on over 9 projects because the results were so positive on the first 2 projects that they checked out with. And it's a lovely quote there from one of our clients, Carl Henderson, digital engineering lead, where he says, the only limitation is your own imagination. So if you think about the processes and understand the processes in your business, you can digitize them with Flowforma, right? As long as you understand that process, you can digitize it. Once you have digitized it, it's under much better control than you ever had it before. And you're going to be able to standardize it across your workforce and measure the effectiveness of that process once it's digitized. So it's a really big step forward. And what we find again and again is once people start on the path of digitization, it's quite addictive, and they will digitize more and more and more. And every single digitalized process gives you a return on investment, which you can measure easily because the system does it for you. So what we'll do now is maybe move on to the next slide. And maybe Sean, you could talk a little bit about our client base.
Absolutely. Thank you, Paul. Just wanted to share some additional information about our users and our current clients. So at present, we have over 200,000 users globally. So when we say users, we're talking about people that in some capacity are either touching a Flowforma flow on a day-to-day basis, they're filling out a document, they're using it out in the field, they're filling out an inspection report, or they might even be responsible for creating processes for their team or their department or their entire company. That's where our users are at. So we have users all over the world right now, and we have clients all over the world as well. We have clients in Asia, the Middle East, Europe. We have clients in North America here in the US and in Canada, and just wanted to share some additional information about some of them there. So the A14 integrated project was an interesting one. They are a large construction project in the United Kingdom, and this was actually the largest highway project, I believe, in European history. It was a massive I want to say it was a 1.5 billion Irish pound project that required a lot of governmental collaboration, involved a lot of people that needed to digitize workflows, and on top of that, they had a lot of tight deadlines where they needed to get work done quickly with goals aligned to that. So just an example of one of our European ones. I know we've talked about Rimkiss quite a bit. Morgan Construction is interesting. They are a Canadian company out of Calgary, Alberta. They specialize in custom oil field projects, and they have about 500 to 700 employees. And when it comes to those oil projects, as I mentioned, high turnover. They're often in places with spotty internet. They historically are reliant on paper and outdated means. Flowforma was able to greatly help them digitize a lot of those workflows and processes. Dresser is an interesting one. They've been around since 1880. They produce industrial electronics, had 750 employees scattered around 100 countries. So when you're talking about that global reach, that impact of a company, being able to embrace something like Flowforma is huge when you're going to market all over the world. Now, one more thing here I'd like to share is oftentimes on these calls we get asked, so, what's your typical user count when it comes to people that are using Flowforma at a particular client? Well, we have some clients that have 50 users on the extremely low end, and we have others that have 2,000. So when it comes to that need or that thirst for digital transformation, every company in many ways is different, but also in many ways they're the same from the standpoint of smaller players, mid-sized players, larger players. They all still need to be having discussions about digital process automation because those details that we shared when it comes to ROI, increased productivity, increased morale, people wanting to stay with the company, it's all very real. So we are a no-code solution that is designed for small, middle, and larger types of construction, engineering, and contracting companies.
So I'd just like to talk a little bit about our process accelerators. So Flowforma is a tool where you can build your own processes from scratch to work your way. But a lot of people ask us, well, hang on a second, does that mean we have to start from zero? Do we have to build our own things from zero? Well, yes, you can, and you can do so very effectively. But we do provide these process accelerators that get you going even faster. So we're talking about get up and running in like a week or two with an actual production process out in the field, making you a return on investment, which is really staggering. So we build process accelerators specifically for construction. They're all based on real life use cases. And these are some examples of those process accelerators. What you can see on the left-hand side are some screenshots of those process accelerators in action. But we'll be very happy to show you those and demonstrate them to you. You just drop over to our website. More about that a little later. But our process accelerators can really get you up and running very quickly, and that's what it's all about. Now, what I'd like to talk to you about now is maybe some general use cases. So the process accelerators there, we're all specific construction processes. But you know what? Flowforma can be used for any process in your organization. So if you feel that the actual finance department is where you need to focus on, you can build processes for finance. If you need HR processes, you can build processes for HR. Again, we have lots of templates out there that'll get you started really quickly. I'm just going to talk about a couple of those because we're very short of time. So I'm going to take staff onboarding and HR. Staff onboarding, contractor onboarding. It's such a big deal for all of our construction customers. I think every single customer actually addresses this need as one of their first priorities when they implement Flowforma. So having an ability to actually correctly onboard your contractors to make sure they're the right quality of person and in the right place at the right time, etc., is really invaluable. The same would go for supplier onboarding. When you bring aboard new suppliers, and maybe because you have supply chain issues and you have to switch supplier at short notice, this is something that Flowforma can do very easily because it's very easy to involve external stakeholders in your processes using Flowforma. Another thing there is things like quality management. Quality management, check sheets, anything you need to do in that regard, again, Flowforma, it's very easy to create those in Flowforma, and you automatically get an audit trail. So as you're building out your process, you're building out that check sheet, maybe it's been used on site, passed internally, all of that's in a full-blown audit trail behind it, and you can collect all that data and use it for reporting. Now, I'm just conscious of time, so maybe what we'll do is move on to the final slide, I think, for Sean there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Paul. So yeah, just looking at this again here, you can see that there's power in the numbers. We just like to share with you those hours saved, those dollars saved, less paper, more effective when it comes to ROI than traditional building process management. That's really what this is all about, is it's having that no-code solution that's able to digitize in multiple departments with multiple processes. Moving on to the next slide there, just want to go ahead and summarize a few key takeaways here. Digitalization, it's not just a buzzword, it's something that is vital. It's vital to the future of your business and your organization. It doesn't have to be difficult. It can seem way more challenging than it is. And really what it comes down to is finding a solution that is going to be a multi-departmental solution. Because if you start going down the path of looking for something in HR and finance and fleet management, et cetera, you're looking at systems that might not communicate with each other and a very hefty bill at the end for all of those things. Not to mention if you're using a third-party partner, those invoices are going to keep coming in left and right. Ultimately, you want to embrace your internal champions, unlock citizen development, empower your people to be part of your future as a company. Start with the lowest hanging fruit, the ones that are causing the most pain, and launch quickly. It's important to get feedback and be open to that feedback from your employees, even if it's somewhat critical. It's important to get that because these people are experts. They have tribal knowledge. They've been there a long time. Embrace them. Don't push them away. Last but not least, focus on the outcomes. The proof is in the pudding, as they say, and there's power in data. And ultimately, we're designed to help you take that data and make logical business decisions with that data. So moving along here, in conclusion, for next steps here, we ask you to fill out the survey post-webinar. If you're interested in a free trial, you can visit the website that you see there on your screen, and feel free to visit flowforma.com. We've got lots of ebooks and case studies, and our marketing team does a really great job of making that public so that people like you can see what we're all about, how we've helped clients, and how we're working to revolutionize the construction and engineering industry. So with that being said, everybody, thank you so much for attending. I am going to kick this back to Scott here, who's going to say a few words, and we're going to save some time here for questions at the end.
Thank you, Sean and Paul. That was a very great in-depth conversation. Before we start to address the questions that have come through during the webinar, I'd like to remind our viewers we love their feedback. So if they would take a few moments to complete our survey, which is on the screen now, it'll also be presented to them at the conclusion of our discussion. And so I'm going to give our audience some time to submit some more questions. But there's two questions that occurred to me during your conversation. And the first one is, if a company's using multiple platforms in their business, how easy is it to integrate other systems with Flowforma?
Yeah, maybe if I could take that one, Scott. So Flowforma is designed to integrate with multiple systems. Imagine a process where you're executing one task, another task, another task to achieve a business goal. And in those different tasks, you might want to speak to several different systems, pull data from your project details into the process, or push data out to your CRM system because you have a customer communication. Flowforma is designed to integrate with multiple systems throughout the process. So in step one, you might be talking to one. Step two, you might be talking to another one. Step three, you might be pushing some information out of the finance system. So it's easy to integrate because we built it as a no-code solution. And what this means is that you don't need to hire developers to do your integration. Now, a lot of people say, whoa, no, hang on a second. We must work with developers. No, you don't need to do that at all. We pre-built integrations to solutions like Procore, for example, so we can automatically push and pull information out of Procore. And the same would go for Viewpoint Vista, for example. So different systems where we built these pre-built integrations allow you to exchange information as you go through that process. And it also is all done through that single system interface. So your Flowforma system basically kind of acts as a front end to those back-end systems, which, as I say, are just integrated with automatically as you go through the process.
Nice. And the other question I had is, if an organization is ready to start digitizing with Flowforma, how do they kickstart it? Is there training involved?
Yeah, so when it comes to kickstarting, really what we work with you there is our program called Sure Start. So that Sure Start is really kind of building the base of the pyramid, the foundation, if you will. And it's designed specifically to work with your team, to train within Flowforma, to get that first process launched and live and moving along within 4 to 6 weeks. So that really is a great place to start because it helps address an immediate business need. It provides training to people that are going to be building within Flowforma from the very beginning. And then it's helping them to carry on that knowledge to their company and their teams to be able to bring about that digital transformation from one process to 3 to 5 to 7 to 20 to 50, whatever it might be. So that's really the best way to start. And it's really, in many times, Scott, it comes down to making the conscious effort to take that step, to get past the fear or the uncertainty of the unknown and jump in and embrace that no-code tool versus low-code or versus IT partners there. So that it's a great place to start. And our customer success and solutions team does a really good job with getting that first one launched within 4 to 6 weeks.
So to that end, a viewer has a question. Are some processes better to start with than others?
Yeah, if I could take that one. And we always say, focus on the pain point. So there's usually processes in your organization that everyone knows are an issue. And really to try and hit those processes that are pain points for as many people as possible is a great way to start because it shows a visible improvement to everybody from week one. And that's really, really important because at the end of the day as well, you're trying to get everybody to buy into change, buy into digital processes. So tackle the processes that hit the most people and from day one. And then, it's very easy with Flowforma to demonstrate improvement. So you can actually, people will see the improvement really quickly, and that generates some enthusiasm, some momentum that you can go on and digitize many more processes. So we'd tackle those. Can I just say as well, like I was saying earlier on, that onboarding is often an excellent starting point for many people. So that's probably the most popular process that people have implemented across the client base.
That's great. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for questions today. Please join me in thanking Paul Stone and Sean Kunkel for their presentation, as well as our sponsor, Flowforma. If you have any additional questions or comments, please don't hesitate to click the Email Us button on your console, and we'll share those with our presenters so they can respond to you directly. We hope you found today's presentation a good investment of your time. Thanks again for joining us, and have a great day.